I suppose a few years ago, if we had heard the words grow remote, we'd have been thinking of growing vegetables remotely outside our house. But of course, COVID came and suddenly remote working became part and parcel of life. And here we are, 2 years on, with a lot of people still working remotely. And you know what? The world hasn't come to an end. Economies are still going okay, despite recession, which has nothing to do with remote working. And the debate now has moved from remote working due to COVID to remote working full time. And there is a very, very active group called Grow Remote, and they promote the whole concept of remote working even before COVID ever landed on our shores or in our world. And next year, in April of next year, they're going to have their annual conference. And they want to host their conference, which will be the third conference since Grow Remote was initiated. They want to hold it somewhere in County Mayo, if possible. And I'm joined on the programme this morning by Tracy Keogh, the co-founder of Grow Remote. Tracy, good to talk to you. Good morning.
Thanks a million for having us.
Not at all. So Grow Remote, I mean, you are, pardon the pun, growing from strength to strength. And I suppose COVID really, was the turning point in the context of persuading all of us who may have had reservations about remote working that it does actually work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, COVID had big impacts on remote work. They weren't actually all positive in terms of some people kind of associated remote work then with working from home during a pandemic, which obviously is quite isolating. And, you're not getting out into your local community, you aren't meeting people and things like that. But overall, since we started in 2018, there was 350 jobs open at the time, remote jobs open in Ireland, and there's now 80,000 remote jobs open in Ireland today, and that's growing at a rate of between 5 to 7% monthly. So definitely COVID did a huge amount for remote work.
Are you more in favour of supporting the remote workers, or do you also want to liaise with the employers?
Yeah, so Grow Remote, we're a non-profit, and our role is to drive systemic change in employment in Ireland. So we work on both sides. We work with companies to transition them to remote, and that means, I suppose, it's more than working from home or hubs. It's about jobs that are now advertised in Dublin need to be advertised in Ireland, in any location in Ireland, so that those career opportunities are equally available to us, whether we're in Roscommon or Dublin city centre. And then on the other side, we need to support remote workers to get involved in their local community, to make sure that the people who need training and skills development have it, and we do all of that. We've got free nationwide training programmes, and we help people find remote work for free.
Now, there was an article last weekend by John Geary and David Mangan in the Irish Times newspaper, I think, about remote working is starting to look like, I think they called it a busted flush. Employers, they say, are hesitant, workers are unsure, and the government is not doing much to help. Do you agree with any of that?
So actually, I was following up with John Geary just yesterday, because I think in talking about the conference in April, I would love to have him there, because that perspective of the naysayers around remote work is really, really important. So some of the points that he made in that article are completely correct. Like, employers that we're working with on the transition to remote do have challenges with remote. It's just that they're not challenges, okay, we can't do it. They're challenges that we need to solve. And that's why it's really important to look to the likes of Shopify, Automatic, GitLab, Wayfair, the companies who are building multi-billion euro companies, and their talent has no location, often within a tax jurisdiction or a time zone. So there were some points in that are concerns of employers, but it doesn't mean that that's the death of remote work, and indeed it can't be.
Your colleague, Kathy McKenna, communications manager with Grow Remote, based in Donegal Town, has a great letter in the Irish Times today. I can't read it all because it's really long, but it's all about remote working. But one paragraph in particular stands out for me, where she says that if employers are hesitant about remote working, it's because the transition from traditional office-based work to a remote-first model is a very significant undertaking, and a well-resourced programme of supports are needed to assist businesses in this. However, the trend towards remote working is a way to increase productivity and deepen the available talent pool and scale was already well established before the pandemic. The authors she's referring to John Geary and David Mangum, also seem to be unaware of the depth of innovation and scale of growth currently happening in Irish companies that operate on a remote first basis. And she names some of those companies at the end of her letter in the Irish Times this morning. So, I think employers now have gotten over the initial, whether you want to call it shock or, not knowing how all of this was going to pan out, realizing that a lot of their employees don't have to come to work every day or any day for that matter. At the end of it all, once the work is done, does it matter really, Tracy, where the employee is?
No, and I think some of the issues that you find with remote work kind of surfaces any of the issues that were in the company anyway, right? And it's even when we're doing training and people managing in remote teams, often it comes back to basic kind of good people management. And it's just when you remove location as a factor, all of a sudden, well, how are we tracking productivity in the first place? Actually, turns out we were just waiting to see who would stay in the office, until the latest hour in the evening. But Kathy makes a brilliant point there around the capital investment needed by companies to transition to remote. And often, we're hearing companies talk about remote work where they let people do 1 or 2 days, outside of the office. That really is flexible working. And for remote work, we need to transition to a point where, again, location has no impact on who you hire or how they perform within the company. And actually, we were in the Oireachtas a couple of months ago, and we brought in an organisation called Glowfox, which is one of the companies that Kathy mentioned. They're an Irish company, remote first. They're hiring 200 people this year. All across Ireland. Those jobs will have no location within Ireland, and that is transformative for them as an organisation, right? They're growing fast, they're doing really, really well, but more so from Grow Remote's perspective, it's transformative for our local communities. If we can plug in that decent employment into the communities who need it most, who don't benefit from FDI because they're too small, they can't, right? The power of that, jeepers, it's just, the societal change is just massive. So that's why we have to make it work. Yeah. There is no option to kind of say it's problematic.
And finally, if you look at a remote worker this morning who traditionally would have gone in, gotten up, gotten into their car, driven to work, having to buy the coffee cups, the whole idea that we can save, we can maybe have a cleaner environment, we have a happier worker, and the work still gets done. It's a bit of a no-brainer nowadays that remote working is here, and it is here to stay. Very finally and briefly, you are going to host your third Grow Remote conference in April of next year, and you're asking towns and villages across our region to apply to host it. What criteria would a community need in order to host a day-long event for Grow Remote?
Yeah, so we held the first ever conference on remote work in Ireland back in 2018, and we did this. We asked communities to come to us and kind of let us know where we could base it. And in 2018 it was Tralee, and I suppose what they had was just a really active community between the chambers, the councils, the local co-working spaces, the tidy towns, each of those. And that's really what you're looking for, a kind of proactive, energetic community groups in the area. The following year we went to Tubbercurry, and again they have a superb community group there. They were Ireland's first digital area, and I suppose they were kind of really driving this concept of remote work and how can you bring it into the local community. So again this year, really just a proactive community. Like, we can do anything around venues and spaces and all of that. You don't need to have a big kind of one venue. It's really just a proactive, can-do, energetic community, and we'll do the rest in terms of obviously bringing all of the right people there.
And if any towns or villages want to apply to host the conference, if you just log on to growremote.ie, that's growremote.ie, you'll get all the information. It's going to happen in April of next year. Listen, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this morning, Tracy.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a good day. That's Tracy Keogh there, co-founder of Grow Remote, on the whole subject of remote work.